It is a rainy day, so we thought we'd do some Q&A.
So we'll start with a controversial one first, apparently.
We are on all these off-grid homestead Facebook groups, and every week there's an argument across the different groups as to what is off-grid and what isn't off-grid, and some people get very angry about it because they insist that, well, since you're on a Facebook group, you're not really off-grid. So it's like, well, why does this grid even exist? So there are different definitions of off-grid and what that really means.
To me, it just means you're not connected to public utilities, electric, gas, sewer, that you're self-sufficient in those items. There's a lot of discussion on groups and things out there that you shouldn't, if you're truly off-grid, you shouldn't have a cell phone and things like that. You shouldn't be able to have a laptop and get online. And to us, it doesn't mean that. It's just being that we provide our own power, we collect our own water, we handle our own sewage. It's this, that we're self-contained and we do those things ourselves and are not relying on the grid. It doesn't mean we can't have phones and laptops and be able to get online and do things online.
So we are completely responsible for our electricity and our heating and our water collection. We have to get all of that stuff ourselves and take care of doing that ourselves. We aren't connected to any sort of city utilities at all. And so for us, that is off-grid. We do have a satellite dish. I'm a website developer and I run my own website development business. And so I have to be able to work because even when you're off-grid, you still have to make money. And so I have to be able to get online. We do have a cell phone signal here. We're close enough we're kind of on top of the mountain here, and so we're able to get a cell phone signal. And we have a cell signal booster. And so when we first got our property, I used that to get online and work. And that works great in the winter. But then when all of the trees get leaves on them, you can't really get a very good signal anymore. And so we learned that first year, that first summer, that we have to have some other alternative way for me to be able to get online and work during the summer, spring, summer, and fall. So we had a satellite dish set up, and it is powered by our solar power, and it works great. So now I can actually work just as quickly, just as well from out here in the middle of nowhere as I can when we're in the city.
The homesteading part is self-sufficiency, again, not with food. So like with the off-grid part, that we're self-sufficient for our power and water and sewer. The same with the homesteading, that we're able to produce our own food through growing vegetables in the garden, having animals that we can harvest. Hunting is a part of that. For me, that's a big part of homesteading and being off-grid, is hunting and providing meat that way. So self-sufficiency is what it's all about. First answer to most of these questions is freedom. It's freedom, self-sufficiency, not having to rely on others to provide your food, to provide your power, your shelter, your water. If you think about how fragile our food delivery system is, it's kind of scary. So it's nice to put yourself in a position where you don't have to rely on that system. So you can provide your own food and not rely on the food distribution system that exists in this country, which frankly is kind of scary how quickly it could break down if things went wrong.
All my life, freedom has been a really very important thing to me. I've always made a lot of decisions about how I would live my life in order to be what I thought of as free. So for example, I went to college for over a decade. I have several degrees, and my reason for doing that, besides the fact that I love to learn, is because I wanted to have a greater freedom to choose my job and to be able to decide more freely what I wanted to do with my life after I got out of school. And then when I was young, and I tried to be pretty because I wanted to be able to have more freedom to choose my life partner. Got him now, so so I don't have to worry about that anymore. And that worked out very well. And so it's always been about freedom for me. And so I didn't always want to be an off-grid homesteader because it wasn't really on my radar. It wasn't something I was thinking about. But once I became aware of that option and started researching it and learning more about it, it just fits in perfectly with my life ambitions, my goals of being as free as possible. So after I started learning about that, I knew that's exactly how I want to live. That's what I want to do.
Since I was a kid, I'd always dreamed about a cabin in the woods. That was just a dream of mine since I was little. The off-grid part probably didn't figure into the equation at that point, but in the last few years, that's when it really hit home about how cool it'd be to be off-grid. And again, back to freedom and self-sufficiency is a common theme in why we do what we do. So yeah, it's been a lifelong dream. That piece of off-grid and homesteading gelled within the last few years that's the way we wanted to go. But yeah, being in the woods, lifelong dream for sure.
I always loved to be in the woods. I loved to go camping. I used to even go camping by myself when I was in college. That's how much I loved to do it. And but it just never really occurred to me that, wow, you could really live this way all the time. And then as I got older and started being exposed through Facebook groups and television shows, about living off-grid and that it was possible, I knew that that's something that I want to do. But even at first, I didn't realize it. It seemed like it would be really hard. So hard that it wouldn't be possible, right? And I think I really had this aha moment when we first found this property and met the woman who we bought the property from, because she had a little solar system that she had set up with just one battery and a couple of solar panels, and she just set it up herself, and it was really simple. Until that moment, I just really didn't understand. I didn't do a lot of research, so I didn't understand that it was something easy enough that we could do ourselves. And yeah, you got to do some research, and it does take some work, and it's not cheap to set up, at least initially. When you set it up, it requires buying a lot of pieces and all. But once you get it set up, and once you understand how the process works, then it's really, really easy. And definitely something doable. And it's something that you can start like we did. Start off small. We just had 2 batteries at first and just a couple of solar panels. And we just, over time, as we can afford it and as we need it, we have bought more and expanded the system. And so now, at this point, I can run my laptop all day long. We're even going to expand it more and add some wind power. So Craig has been researching to learn how to do all of that. And that's how it's been all along. When we first bought this property, we didn't know how to do anything. We didn't know how we were going to get our water. We didn't know really how to set up a robust solar power system. We didn't know how we were going to heat the cabin. And we've just figured that out all along the way. For the water, at first we thought about getting a well. That's kind of, that's what people do when they live off grid, right? They get a well. But that's really expensive, and we didn't really want that expense. And after we were here for a while, we realized, you know what, we get a lot of rain here, a lot of rain. So that is going to be more than enough for all of our water needs just to do water collection. So that's, you just figure it out a little piece at a time after you're here and start living with these processes. You learn what works and what doesn't. And yeah, it's part of the process. We had been looking for years for property. We knew we wanted to get a property, probably with a cabin on it, We're not builders. So we knew we wanted something where we could go to be out in the woods, maybe live there when we retired. We knew we wanted that. We weren't at that point thinking about off-grid yet. It wasn't part of our, we just weren't talking about it. And but we knew, we had been looking for years, and we had a list of requirements and a wish list that we wanted, and we just hadn't found anything. We wanted something that was within 2.5 hours of where we lived in the city, and we wanted to have at least maybe 10 acres, I guess. We wanted land. We wanted it to be some wooded, wanted to be able to garden. So all of that was important. And we also wanted to be able to pay cash. We don't want to be in any debt. And so we just looked and looked and never found anything for years.
How we got the property is a very, very interesting story. We had, were on vacation. We had went up to Maine to visit one of my daughters that was living up there at the time. And then from there we went and spent a few days in Niagara Falls. And we're sitting in the hotel room in Niagara Falls, and I was just going through Facebook, and a friend had posted about a friend of hers that was selling some property and had a few pictures. And when I saw that, I immediately told Blue, when we get home, we have to go check this out.
I remember we were getting ready in the morning, we were in a hotel, and Craig said, oh my gosh, this is it, oh my gosh. And I'm like, what? And so then he showed me her post.
We contacted the lady that had this property for sale and immediately came down here, looked it over, and immediately made an offer on the property and bought it that day, because it was just exactly what we've been looking for the last 3 or 4 years. We'd kind of been looking for some property, and this just ticked most of the boxes of what we were looking for, and it just worked out good. So Facebook came through on something, which it doesn't always.
And so we looked at the property, and it was rough, man. There was just like this little unfinished shack, and she had a shipping container, which was another thing. We had really talked about the idea of getting a shipping container and living in a shipping container. And so that was something we'd watched a lot of videos about how to do that. So that was something we were very interested in. So probably one of the biggest draws for us for this was the shipping container. And so we contacted her immediately. And then the next weekend after we got home, we drove down. It was about 2.5 hours away from our place where we live in the city, and gave her an offer immediately, and we bought it right away. And we have never regretted it for 1 second. We love this place, and it was rough. She lived here part-time by herself and had tried to build and just hadn't finished it. So the cabin was really just like an unfinished shack at that point. But it gave us a place to stay. Those first winters were freezing cold because there was no insulation, and but we learned a lot, you know. So we started staying here every other weekend. We'd come down and we would to stay and start cleaning the land, clearing off the land. And the land was completely raw, and nothing had been done. There weren't any trails. There wasn't a lot of land cleared. So we had to start doing all of that. And our one big problem was we aren't builders. And so we didn't know what we were going to do, because we don't know how to build, and we just don't have those skills. But we knew we were supposed to get this, and we didn't care. We were going to get it, and we would figure it out. And so we talked about, well, let's just watch YouTube videos. You can learn how to do anything on YouTube videos. So that was, I guess, what we were going to do. We talked about trying to find a builder, trying to find somebody to pay them to come and help us finish the cabin. But we're out in the middle of nowhere. We are 5 miles away from the closest paved road, and so, you know, it's obviously causes a lot of potential problems. How do you get somebody to even come out here? So then we met our neighbors, and our neighbors are this wonderful couple, and they live about, it's about maybe a little less than half a mile away. Can't see their cabin from here, but they, you know, they are our closest neighbors. And and we have grown to love them. They are just wonderful friends now. But when we first met them, we found out that he is a builder. And he was looking for work at the time. And so, you know, one thing led to another, and we asked him if he would be interested in letting us hire him to build our cabin out for us, to finish it. And then, of course, we had other projects that we needed help with. And he said yes immediately. And he was excited to have the opportunity. He has a job now. He doesn't even have to leave the area where he lives now to do the work. And so that has worked out wonderfully. It's been a win-win situation for all of us, because this gave him the job that he needed at the time, and then it also solved our problem. And he's wonderful. He's a wonderful builder, and he's continued to build for us. He's built a barn for us now, built a wonderful fence around our gardening area. We later bought more property with another unfinished shack, and so he's finished that out for us. Now we're in the process of getting ready to build our bigger cabin that we are going to live in full time, and so we're talking to him about that. And it's so wonderful because we'll just kind of tell him what we want, and then he starts working on it, and then we're gone back to our city house for a couple of weeks and come back, and it's like Christmas. It's like all this stuff he's been working and getting it done, and so it's just been wonderful. And then my husband Craig retires in April, which is 3 months away, and so after that we're going to be coming down here full time, and we want to live down here full time, and so we're getting ready for that. So we'll actually be helping him build this cabin. And hopefully we'll learn a lot. We don't want to just not know how to build. We want to expand our knowledge and skills in that area too. So yeah, I don't even remember what the question was anymore, but there you go. Well, you never are finished if you're an off-grid homesteader. There will always be more projects, and the projects that you started with will need to be redone. If you ever finish, then you got to go back and start all over again. So there will never be a time when we can just sit back and say, "Oh, we're done now."
Future plans. There's a lot. There's a lifetime of plans here to keep us busy until we're done. But first is to build a cabin, a bigger cabin than what we have now, back on the field that we did a controlled burn on and cleared. And if you've seen our other video about the burn, that was the day we decided that's what we were going to do, because the view over there is amazing. So that's first on the list, is get that cabin built. I retire in a few months, so we want to get that bigger cabin built so we got the space for living space down here. And then beyond that, that's when we want to start with animals, probably chickens first. We want to do some meat birds and some layers, and then rabbits I think next, and then we're considering down the road a goat, and we're looking at maybe feeding out of 1 pig a year just so we got some pork. That's the main things for now, in addition to land improvements. Want to build a smokehouse. Obviously we're going to have to build chicken coop and those kinds of things. We'll be building a lot more outbuildings as time goes on.
Down the road, we also want to set this place up as a retreat where other people can come and stay and learn how to homestead, learn how to be self-sufficient and live off the grid. There's a very big spiritual element to this. We want people to be able to retreat from the city and where all the busyness and craziness is of the city, and to be alone in the woods, to be able to find God there and seek God in the woods, in nature. And we already have one guest cabin that we want to open up for that pretty soon, maybe in the next year. We want to build a few more little cabins so that we could have, and this would just be small, little, just for 1 or 2 people at a time to come down and be able to experience the off-grid homestead life and also use it as a spiritual retreat. The biggest challenge of living the off-grid homestead life is simply that you have to do everything. When you live in the city, everything's already figured out for you. You don't have to figure out how to get your water or how to have electricity. You just flip a switch. You know, you buy a new house and it's all set up. You don't have to figure out anything. And here, we had to start from scratch. We had to figure out every piece of the way. We had to figure out how to set up our power and get our rainwater. I had to figure out how to wash dishes. We had to figure out how to go to the bathroom. Everything, even the smallest details, have to be figured out and set up. We have to do that ourselves. And so that's the biggest challenge, but it's also one of the biggest joys because I get the biggest sense of satisfaction. I mean, I made my own toilet. How many people can say that? We set up our own power system. We get our own water. We do this all ourselves. And so we have such a feeling of satisfaction knowing that we have done this ourselves. And because of that, we don't take any of these things for granted. So it means more, you know? If you just flip a light switch and your light turns on and you didn't do anything for that, you didn't have to work to make that happen. So it doesn't mean anything. Why would you even think about it? You don't have to even consider it, you know? So you take it for granted, of course. And we don't take any of those things for granted because we remember sitting down and drawing it out and trying to figure it out and getting the individual pieces and doing the work and the trial and error and trying things that didn't work and then finding the way that did work and the joy and the satisfaction of finding that thing that actually does work and works very well. So things are more meaningful out here, I believe, when you have to do it yourself.
Challenges is interesting. There's a lot of things that are a challenge, but they're also some of the most fun things because we love to figure out things. So like solar power, I had no idea about solar power, how to set it up, how it worked. So we had to do the research, figure it out, how to set it all up, how to wire it, and how to make it work, and we did. And same with rain catchment and the automatic watering system for the garden. You know, they're challenging things that you have to figure out, but they're also fun because we love to research. We just love to figure things out, and that's a huge part of what we enjoy about off-grid living and homesteading is the challenge to figure out things that you take for granted at home and when you're on the grid. You know, you just flush the toilet, you turn on the tap and you've got water, you're cold, you turn up the furnace a little bit and you're warm. It's so easy, and that's the challenge of not having things that easy is what is attractive to us about this lifestyle, and we just love it. So challenges, yes, but those challenges are fun and exciting.
And your food as well. Think how important food is. Everybody has to eat. Everybody has to figure that out. So that's why for most people that means they go to work and they work 40 hours a week in a little cubicle so that then they have money and then they can go to the grocery store, you know? And that's how most people live in our country, in our culture, and that's fine. But we have to do all that ourselves. So we kind of have the best of both worlds right now because we do have jobs and so we do have an income. So we also can go to the grocery store when we need to, and we're still not 100% self-sufficient, and I don't know that we ever will be 100%. But our goal is to be as self-sustaining as possible. So we have what we call our 2 grocery bag goal, and we want to get there eventually. We're not there yet. Got a long way to go, but we want to get to the point where we are so self-sustaining that when we do go to the grocery store once a month, we only need to buy 2 grocery bags full of stuff, whatever those things might be. So that's our goal, and we'll see how long it takes us to get there. So, but yes, think about your food. Even this most necessary thing that everybody needs is your food, and we have taken responsibility for that on ourselves. You know, we don't have to rely as much on the systems that are set up in our culture for going to the grocery store. Think how much is required to get that to work. And I think a lot of people are having kind of a awakening about what that means because of all the COVID-19 stuff. And we're seeing how these systems that are put in place that allow us to go to the grocery and buy whatever food we want and buy toilet paper, those systems are not fail-safe. There are things, many things that could happen, not just a virus, that could cause those systems to fail. And all these people live their lives not even thinking about that and just relying on those things. And we don't just rely on those. As off-grid homesteaders, we want to take responsibility for feeding ourselves. We don't want to have to rely on those systems that are set up by these big corporations and by other people, because we know they're not fail-safe. And if someday those systems go down, temporarily, permanently, we're already in a position where we can feed ourselves. It won't be as comfortable, but we want to keep working to make it so that we are as independent of all of those systems as possible. There are so many favorite parts. It's really hard to say. One of my favorite parts is living so close to nature. I've always loved nature. Nature is my church. It's where I worship God the most. Just to be surrounded. I love being surrounded by God's creation. I think when you walk out into the woods, you have to, for me anyway, I know immediately that there is a God. God exists because I can see everything that He's made all around me. And it's so complex. And to me, that just shouts out, hey, there is an intelligent creator. So that's why, for me, just walking in the woods, I immediately worship God. And when you live here, off-grid in this way, in Homestead, you have an intimate relationship with your land. I'm in the dirt. I'm working in the dirt, and I'm planting things and making things grow. I'm causing that dirt to feed us, right? And also then we hunt. So you're intimately involved with the land and the animals that live on this land, and feeding yourself. And also, because we're never going to have air conditioning. We do have to heat in the winter, but living off-grid with solar power, you can't have a house set up that can be all closed in and shut out the outdoors the way that people do in the city. So we're always much more aware of what's going on, the weather, and how because it affects us a lot more. We live off the land, and so we need to know what the weather is going to be like. And your body, I believe that's how people were made originally, how it was intended to be, that our bodies kind of learn to change in these cycles that are connected to the seasons. And it just, now that we live this way, it feels so natural. It's the way I believe human beings were created to live, in cooperation with nature, not shutting it out, not closing your house and your windows and having these thick walls and air conditioning yourself in, and so that you go from one air-conditioned building into your air-conditioned car into another air-conditioned building, and you never have to experience the outdoors. And when you live so much closer to the outdoors, your body starts to respond to that. So I can feel minute differences, changes in the humidity that I never would have noticed before when I just lived in the city. And so I understand how, like farmers, people who have lived their whole lives out in the weather like that, how they can tell exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to rain, because that's been their whole life. And people lived this way for most of the history of humanity, much more connected with nature. It's only in the past 100 years that we have been able to have our houses all shut up, and we live in this very controlled environment, and we can be completely in control of what the temperature and the humidity is around our bodies at all time. And it separates you from nature. It separates you from the things that God created.
That's a tough one. What's my favorite part? Because there's so much to love about this lifestyle. But for me, probably the woods. Just being out here in the woods and being able to have your own woods that you can, and we've created our own trail system, and it's just so cool to be able to walk out your front door and jump on a trail that you created and walk through your woods and spend time out there. And you know, I grew up learning how to hunt from as a little kid and spent a lot of time in the woods, and then there was a period of time where life got busy and had kids, and I lost that. You know, I didn't spend the time that I used to spend and kind of forgot about it. It just wasn't a part of my life for a long time. And, you know, I didn't even really miss it because I had things going on that took my time. But now, as the kids are grown and I'm getting close to retirement, it's so nice to return to that love that I had as a young child and be able to experience that again and have that excitement again. Even as an old man, I can feel that excitement that I felt when I was young to spend that time in the woods. Is there anything about this lifestyle I hate? No. Simple as that. I don't have to go any farther. No, I love this lifestyle. I love being out here. I love the challenges. So far, now we're doing it full time. Could that come about? Maybe. I don't think so though. I just love this lifestyle. I love being out here. So there's nothing that I hate about it.
There is nothing about the off-grid life that I hate. Nothing that I hate. Sometimes it's hard and it's very difficult sometimes. And, you know, if something breaks, you've got to fix it. Like when we got here this weekend, it was really, really cold. And so we spent half a day very uncomfortable while we tried to get our propane heater to heat up the cabin. And it is not working anymore. And there's some deer out there right now. Wonder if we can get a video of them. Oh, that's awesome. This is one of the things I love the most. So we were just sitting here and I see Craig's face go and I turned around and looked and there's 2 does out here in our yard. And of course this happens a lot, but I never get tired of watching them. They're so fun to watch. That's awesome! I love their big fluffy white tails. Oh, how cool! What a neat thing. I'll include that.
Advice. Obviously there's steps. So first step, you have to find your property. You got to find the property that you want that'll work for you. And then once you find that property, you need to have some kind of structure. You need to be able to live on that property to do other things. So that be if you bring down a motorhome or you get one of those sheds like they sell at Lowe's or Home Depot that you can have hauled out and you insulate and fix that up for living space, wall tent, whatever. You need some kind of living space so that you can do your work on the property and prepare the property. Small steps. I know some people, and we're like that too, you just want to dive in and do it all, and you just can't. It overwhelm you if you try to do that. You got to do small steps. So property, structure, if you need to do clearing on your land to prepare it for having animals or whatever, you do that. So that's my biggest bit of advice, is just do it in small chunks. Don't overwhelm yourself by looking at the big picture and thinking about all these multitudes of things that you have to get done, because it'll overwhelm you. So do it in small pieces. Make gradual progress every day. Figure out your plan for the day, the things you want to get done, whether clear land, add something to your structure, build a chicken coop. Small bites, small steps, so you don't overwhelm yourself. that's the biggest thing I can tell you is just gradual, patient progress.
Don't join the Facebook groups. No, you actually can get a lot of good information from the Facebook groups for homesteading and off-grid life. But there's a lot of drama, so just be prepared for the stupid, pointless drama. Well, yeah, what I find is that a lot of people, probably over half of the people on those Facebook groups, aren't really off-grid, but they're the ones who cause all the drama. So internet, social media is what it is. So, but you can, there are a lot of resources online. There's all the different groups in social media, people who really are living the life, and so you can just pop on there and ask questions about things that come up. And the internet is just such a valuable resource. That is where we've gone to learn everything, to research how to set up our solar power system, and researching just everything that we've needed to learn how to do. The humidor dry composting toilet that we use, we learned how to set that up online. So that is a valuable resource. My other advice would be to be patient. If you start on the process of living off-grid, you're probably not going to be able to get everything all set up at once. So you have to learn you have to be patient, figure things out, make things better over time. Unless you just have an unlimited supply of money and you can pay other people to come set things up. But then you're missing a big, huge part of it. Part of being an off-grid homesteader is learning how to do these things yourself and being independent. So you've got to give yourself time to learn everything and get everything set up. And I love how this kind of parallels how the pioneers lived. When I grew up reading the Laura Ingalls Wilder's books, favorite books. One of the reasons why I always wanted to live out in the woods is to be like Laura Ingalls Wilder. And so when they first went out west, they had to live very, very simply at first. It was very uncomfortable, but the longer they were there, the better they improved their farm and their homestead. And so life continued to get easier and easier in some ways. And still there was lots of work to do. But so we've kind of followed that same way of starting out small, more uncomfortable, and then continuing to improve and learn how to make things better. And so I love it that our lives kind of parallel the pioneers in that way. So you have to have patience, you have to be willing to work really hard. But then on the other hand, my advice would be, don't feel like you have to have it all figured out and you have to have everything ready before you go. You need to make sure you're not going to starve to death and you're not going to freeze to death. You have to have that worked out. But don't feel like every tiny little detail has to be all figured out, or else you're never going to do it. Once you have the main things figured out and you know you're set up and you're not going to starve and you're not going to freeze to death, go ahead and do it. Look for your property. So don't be afraid to make that jump. It takes a lot of guts. A lot of people will not understand why you want to live this way. They won't understand why you want to be independent, live on your own, out in the middle of the wilderness. A lot of people will give you a hard time. Maybe your family members won't understand. But if that's what you really want to do, it is doable. You can do it. If we could do it, other people can do it. So don't be afraid to make that jump. It's a wonderful life. We don't regret it. We've never regretted it for 1 second. I think that it's the way human beings were made to live, and I think it's the most satisfying, wonderful life that we could ever live.